Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
Do you ever feel like you just don't have the time to sit down and read the news every morning? Sometimes things get so hectic you can't even scroll through your feeds while you're trying to get ready. A podcast from Boise State Public Radio has you covered. I'm George Prentice, and I want to invite you to check out The Connector every weekday morning. You can get up to speed on all of the Idaho news you need to start your day without ever interrupting your morning routine. All you have to do is hit play. That's The Connector from Boise State Public Radio. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. A new book is shining a spotlight on some of Idaho's most inspiring trailblazers. Incredible Idaho Women, 43 Inspiring Stories for All Ages, celebrates the achievements of women who have shaped our state's history and its future. Kara Jackson, who is the co-founder and managing partner of BoiseDev.com, created this new book, and we're lucky enough to have her joining us today to talk about this. Kara, it's always great to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Gemma.
Well, a big congrats on the release of this book. Now, for those folks who haven't heard about it, tell us what the book is all about.
Yes, so the book is called Incredible Idaho Women, 43 Inspiring Stories for All Ages. And it really has all sorts of different stories about a wide range of women. Some of the names you'll know and some of them you won't. But what's really cool is each page has a short story about that woman. It's around 300 words long, and we really targeted it to be something that older elementary students could read, but is also still interesting to adults. And then we partnered with 10 Idaho artists to create a portrait for each woman, which accompanies that story.
So what inspired you, Kara, to start this project?
Yes, so the inspiration came to me over 5 years ago during the summer of COVID. My husband and business partner, Don, and I were actually up in Ketchum for kind of a long weekend. And we biked one day past Celebration Meadow, where all the statues are of the Olympians tied to Sun Valley. And that was the first day that I learned about Gretchen Fraser. And I was just kind of like set back about how, you know, a native Idahoan, someone who loves skiing and history and women, like didn't know about Gretchen. And so at that moment, I kind of had this like really cool idea about this book that fused stories about incredible Idaho women from many different walks of life with really beautiful art that was created by local artists.
So was that the moment then, you know, learning about Gretchen, where you were like, okay, there's got to be more stories like this that folks need to know about?
Yes, that was the moment. Like, I didn't know how I hadn't known about Gretchen, who won a gold medal in alpine skiing in 1948 when it was thought that no American could win any medal in alpine skiing. The Europeans ruled it. And it was just so inspiring to me that I knew there were lots of other stories like that out there about Idahoans. And obviously, some of them we know, right? Like Kristen Armstrong, but a lot of them we don't. And I also wanted to really shine the light on a lot of different types of walks of life and a lot of diversity and what it can mean to be incredible. Because it's not just about Olympic medals, right? It can also be about being a really incredible mother, an incredible teacher, an incredible neighbor, or a person who's giving back to the community. So that was really the goal for the book.
I have to tell you, Kara, when I opened the book, I didn't expect to see the artists' portraits. They are stunning. I mean, talk a little bit more about that, because you could have, you know, just put a photograph and the story of this individual.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to, you know, I thought about just doing photos, but I just didn't feel like that captured things right. And we have so many amazing local Idaho artists that I felt that this would be a really great opportunity to partner with them. And so we, did a whole massive research, project in the spring when we were writing the stories and finding these artists and reaching out to them and asking them to do portraits. And we also intentionally matched the artists with the women to try to make sure that the and spirit of each woman's story was captured in that portrait.
I think it's fair to say, Kara, that Idaho has such a strong sense of community as well as history. So, what was it that drew you to focus, on these women, from our state, but also in such different walks of life?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started the project, we brought our whole editorial team of about 9 people together and did kind of a really big brainstorm on the different types of paths and careers and ways that somebody can make a difference. And so we kind of started to, it was kind of this spreadsheet pivot table of, okay, we want to make sure we have women from every historical era that in Idaho. But we also want to have, and from every part of the state, but we also want to have women from all these different types of walks of life. And so it was kind of this massive research project of, identifying women in those different categories and then figuring out what stories fit based off of the other criteria we were trying to fulfill.
Well, I have a feeling that even though there are just 43 stories in this book, you had a lot to choose from. I mean, because you, as you said, you did categories. I mean, we're talking from pioneers, to modern day business leaders. So, how did you decide who to include?
It was so difficult. It was really kind of, we picked the first 10 and then we picked another 10. And so we kind of continued through that process. And some of the decisions were really difficult. We joke about having spreadsheets of women because we have literally lists of hundreds and hundreds of women who've done really notable and incredible and remarkable things in our state. So it was really about finding the right stories that fit. And the goal was to really have a story in the book that spoke to any person that picked the book up. And so it was really about thinking, as a journalist and as a reporter from your audience perspective, and how can we bring in different stories that are going to connect with different types of people.
Mhm. Were there any stories or people that you discovered in this process that maybe surprised you?
Oh, well, I mean, there's so many surprises and stories that I didn't know, about before we started doing this book. And I could just go on and on and on. I mean, I was able to write Mildred Bailey's a story, and she's a woman who was, kind of like the queen of jazz. She was called the Queen
Hmm.
of Swing and Mrs. Swing in the 1930s, and she actually grew up in northern Idaho and is part Native American. And so I hadn't known that story, and it's a really cool piece of history. Another one that I didn't know about, but I kind of feel like I'm carrying on her tradition before the book, is Betty Penson Ward. She was a local Boise native, or she lived in Boise, and she wrote for the Idaho Statesman for more than 50 years. She was an editor of what was formerly the women's section and is now more kind of the culture part of the newspaper. And she had this incredible life, but then something that she did was she actually wrote a book about Idaho women that was published in 1990. So I kind of feel an affinity towards her, and that, hopefully I'm carrying on her tradition well and her legacy. So there's, I think, all these different really incredible stories, and it just kind of weaves, I think, a beautiful, like, uh, you know, picture of what it can mean to be incredible, what it means to be an Idahoan, and how
Hmm.
no matter what your talents are or where you are at in life, like you can do something to make a difference, to be great for your community, to help things be better, and so that's what I really hope people see.
So some of the women in the book are deceased. I mean, because as we mentioned, I mean, you have pioneers in the book. Some of the women are still living. So did you or any of your staff get to interview any of the women or maybe their families? And if so, I mean, what was that like?
Yes. So nearly all of the women who are living, we had a direct interview with, which was absolutely remarkable. Um, and some of the deceased women, we were also able to have interviews with their family members. We actually had an event just yesterday celebrating the launch of the book, where about 14 of the women from the book were there on a panel. And then we had family members of some of the women in the book who were deceased there as well. And so getting to hear their stories directly was so inspiring. One that's really a couple that are really memorable to me was I was able to interview Cecilia Violeta Lopez, who is a
Oh, I
world-class
love
opera
her.
singer and originally from Rupert. And she spent probably over an hour on Zoom with me. And it was just so remarkable to get to hear her story firsthand. I also interviewed Alice Hennessy, who, had an incredible career in business. She was one of the
Hmm.
first women to be on the board of a Fortune 500 company just here in Boise, Idaho. And I got to interview her over tea and apple crisp at her house. And so it was really wonderful to see how welcoming these women were to sharing their stories and letting us, write their stories for this book.
Kara, some of these women faced incredible challenges, right? And we're talking things from discrimination to even to isolation. I mean, it really runs the gamut. Did you see any common threads in their journeys as the book was being written?
Absolutely. And yesterday at our event, we heard a lot of common threads as well. A lot of these women, had massive challenges or adversity, or were told they couldn't do things. But what we consistently heard from them is that, just because somebody tells you you can't do something, or they try to prevent you from accomplishing your goals or dreams, to not give up, to keep working at it, to surround yourself with a community of people who do believe in you, who do give you positive, feedback and energy, and to just keep taking it day by day. You don't have to rule the world or accomplish something in one day. You can just keep chipping away at something day after day, and over time you do get there.
Well, what about the historical figures that you write about in the book? I mean, did they surprise you at all? And maybe how modern or ahead of their time maybe they were?
Absolutely. I think there's this kind of fascinating piece of Idaho history that a lot of people don't realize. And that was in the late 1800s, Idaho was very progressive
Hmm.
from a women's rights standpoint. We were the fifth state to give to give women the right to vote. And so some of the figures we wrote about historically, the suffragettes, some of the early politicians, were really quite incredible and remarkable in how, they were able to be so successful at a time when that was really challenging. One that's really amazing to me is Rebecca Mitchell. And she was not only an educator, but also a missionary and a suffragist. And she was the first female chaplain of a legislative body, and that was in 1898. So it's really incredible to see those stories as well, and to think about how all of those women kind of laid bricks for the future generations.
So, the book is subtitled Inspiring Stories for All Ages. How did you make sure it resonated or that it will resonate with younger readers as well? And I will tell you this. This book has been sitting on my desk and I've been reading it. And as my two boys have come into my office, they've both picked it up at different times, been like, "What's this?" And I'm like, "Well, look at it." And they've both opened it up. And what I love is that the stories are short. So they each read a story and then we're like, "Oh, I didn't know about that." And then kind of went on their way. But they actually read a story about someone in the book.
Yeah, so it was a challenging goal, right? And
Hmm.
as for Boise Dev, our audience is adults, right? We write news stories. But something that we always try to do is write like our readers talk, and try to make things as simple to understand as possible. And so we took that approach. But then the other thing we really did was we tried to think about how, children would want to read this and what they would find interesting. In the early editing process, we actually hired a third grade teacher who's also taught fourth grade to edit all the stories and provide us feedback on kids won't understand what this means, or use this
Ah,
word or phrasing instead, to help make it more approachable for children. And then the length as well, right? Like if I mean, there's some of these women that I would love to write chapters and chapters about, but the reality is that most children and even adults are going to get bored by that. So if we could find, the best pieces of the story and make it something succinct, we felt like it would be approachable and interesting to a lot of different ages of people.
So the book is out now, and I have to say we're coming up on the holidays. I think this would be a great like stocking stuffer, it'd be a great gift for someone. Where can folks find the book?
Yes, so they can go to incredibleidahowomen.com to purchase a copy directly from us, and we ship those out every day. And we also have several different retail partners throughout the valley who will be carrying the book. A few include Rediscovered Bookstore, Rediscovered Books, the Barnes and Noble and Meridian will be carrying the book. Old Speak, Common Ground Coffee Shop, Flying M, and we'll have a continued list of those retail stores that will be offering the book for sale on incredibleidahowomen.com as well.
Okay, before I let you go, I have to ask. I mean, you still have that spreadsheet of women, and there were only 43 stories in this. I'm saying first book. Do you think there's going to be a volume two in the future?
I don't know. People have asked me that, and I'm just tired right now. Um, we produced this book in 10 months, so it was kind of like, pregnancy and having a kid.
Yeah, no
Luckily,
kidding.
not as physically painful. But these are muscles that we don't stretch every day in, the news business. So I would love to write a book, but I need a couple of years, kind of like people do need with having children. So maybe there will be a volume two or some other variation of this in a couple years, but it's going to be a few years.
All right, we'll give you some time. We understand. So I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. It's such a great book, Kara. So really a huge congrats to you and all of your staff at Boise Dev for really putting such a lovely book together.
Yeah, thank you so much. And one other plug, we're also doing a buy one, give one campaign. So for every book purchased, we'll be donating one to a local nonprofit library, school, or child in need. So that's also really important to us. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gemma.
So great. Absolutely. We've been talking with Kara Jackson, co-founder and managing partner of BoiseDev.com. She's the creator of the new book, Incredible Idaho Women, 43 Inspiring Stories for All Ages. And you can get one now and maybe share one as well as a gift. I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.